Hello and welcome to another episode of The Real Deal with Josh and Charles. I'm back from that Siberian gulag in Uzbekistan where I was trapped because Bane broke my back and I had to watch CNN. Oh my God, it was so bad because Gotham was in trouble and I couldn't get there. But thank God for Batgirl. And now I'm back and we're going to finish the movie strong and no more nukes in Gotham because Batman's home. Hi, Charles.
I'm going to let Mark know that he's now officially Batgirl as far as Real Deal's concerned.
Yeah, and I'm Batman because I was in a Uzbeki cave in Siberia.
So you made the leap? How many tries did it take you?
Oh, what's interesting about being in a hole in Uzbekistan is not only is it extremely compelling viewing, but you learn about yourself. Because when you're at the bottom of a big hole in Uzbekistan, you're like, oh, I can never get out. It's so big. But if you just keep jumping like some fucking asshole, eventually over time, you leave the thing in Uzbekistan, and then you go back home and Morgan Freeman.
I'm speechless, but in that, I'm so happy to hear your voice. It's like a, what's it like? Is there a thing that's like?
Well, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe it's like, those videos of like abused dogs who see the sun for the first time ever and they just like, cry and roll around in the grass.
I did actually. I was watching one of those videos earlier.
Yeah? Was there like an occasion for that, or you just sort of dove in?
You know how the internet is, man. You're at work, you're bored, you get online, you check your Facebook, and suddenly you're inundated with Trump and dogs.
Yeah.
That's all I had today. Actually, I didn't even get on today. I was too busy trying to wrap up because I'm going on vacation next week. So I had to actually do some shit.
Boast about it more.
Yeah.
Where are you going on vacation?
Going to sunny California.
Hey, California is the home of Hollywood, and that's where movies are made and dreams are made. And are you shooting a pic out there? Are you working with you and Zack Snyder going to finally sit down in that thing you've been talking about?
No, just going to relax, man. Just going to take a break. Not talk to you probably the whole time and just rest easy. But yeah, actually this is 2 weeks in a row where we've had movies that, well, I guess you weren't there for one of them, but I was around for both, and they both really...
I was in a Uzbeki prison in the ground, Charles. I think we dealt with that.
Yeah, you learned stuff about yourself. Did you learn how shitty a beard you can grow in a week?
Oh, so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, so terrible. Well, the thing about being in that Uzbeki hole in the ground is that time seemed to move a little erratically, Charles, because at first it was moving in very, very large quantities, but then all of a sudden it slowed down to just moments at a time. So, yes, beards, though.
But this is the second week in a row where we have two movies about Los Angeles, and neither of them really made Los Angeles out to be a great place.
Charles, I hate to open this up with contention, but you're incorrectly geographically locating one of the two films.
Oh, shit. Was Nightcrawler not in L.A.?
Nightcrawler was in L.A., but Richard Linklater stepped well out of his comfort zone to make a movie about Austin, Texas.
No, I was saying last week we watched... You weren't here for last week. We did Mulholland Drive. And that...
Oh, right. I was too busy in that prison.
Yeah. And so that was all about how shitty Los Angeles was. And pretty much Nightcrawler is... it's about more than that, but... It definitely touches on how shitty Los Angeles is. So I'm not going to Los Angeles. I'm going to San Francisco area and then driving up the coast to Portland, the other one.
The inferior Portland, as you would have it.
I do say that, yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about both these movies. I really have they're both really fun movies to talk about, and they're really fun to watch. I loved...
And Charles, this is a fun podcast.
Yeah. It super was, and the Linklater was a blast. I love Linklater. I can't wait to talk about that. And Nightcrawler, definitely a fascinating look. And that guy, I'm not going to pronounce his name like I did last time we had him on the episode. We had him on the episode, right? Episode 3, was it?
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah, he was here in my bedroom. I don't think he said very much.
Well, it was a bummer because the mics just weren't working that day, so we kept throwing it to Jake, but he just wasn't giving that energy back.
Yeah.
So, it kind of was convenient because we kind of had to cut around him anyways. But he really gave it his all in Nightcrawler.
He did. and yeah, we can get right in.
I wanna
go.
I wanna just say that we picked for this week 2 movies so aggressively disparate in tone. Like, as a study in polarity, we have a movie that takes place in the lurid, floodlight lit siren, ear piercing realm of like nighttime crime scene Los Angeles, and basically what seemed like the best weekend ever in a sunny afternoon of Austin, Texas in the late summer months of 1980. And I was delighted to think about these 2 movies in the same general gray matter quadrant because they are so fucking different. And man, I wanted to get into Nightcrawler because it is very rare that I watch a movie where I'm so quickly bowled over by its beauty. And Nightcrawler is a gorgeous movie. It's shot in this very sumptuous, lush, rich color palette. And what I loved about it is that much of the daytime that's depicted in the film is deliberately lacking something that nighttime has. Like, the day always seems, a little washed out, a little colorless. But at night in Nightcrawler, it really, like, that scope of the city as this, like, oozing, bleeding, wailing, entity is really brought to life visually in such a beautiful way. And did you notice that? Did you like that?
Yeah, dude, I did notice that, and I watched it with my dad, and it was funny, the first thing, like, we got maybe 20 seconds in, and he's like, this movie is beautiful, I love it already. And it's true, those shots, whoever did I didn't look up the DP, but they did a great job of really making, the night, it reminded me a little bit of Drive in the way that it looked, in that really focused in on some of the nighttime stuff. At least those night shots were pretty powerful. It's a very well done movie, and I think I'm going to get into some of the things I sort of didn't appreciate as much. This is my second viewing, and there's so many good things, especially your first time. I can see it being really overwhelming and just like a tour de force.
Well, 2 things on that. One is, if you like Drive, I'm going to do 2 things here. 1, I'm going to blow your mind, and 2, I'm going to try to read your mind. And both of these things come from exhaustive research me and my team of interns did by going to IMDb and looking at the trivia section. And I know, it's like, Josh, you contribute so much every week. How do you go the extra mile? Well, here's a look behind the curtain. I go to IMDb and I read things. I take them as if they are God's word, and then I repeat them on here and somehow feel like I deserve credit for it.
You do.
The diner, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I believe I do as well.
Yeah.
The diner in Nightcrawler is the same diner from Drive.
That's it. That's why I knew you did blow my mind. That's insane.
Yeah. And
like, I believe it.
Let me guess.
I believe it, but part of me doesn't believe it.
Well, Hollyweird, It's all, it's like diners. Everyone's in a diner. My friend kept trying to claim that it looked like the diner from Pulp Fiction. But Ben, if you're listening, it wasn't. So you were wrong. And now I'm embarrassing you on international radio.
Yeesh. I could see how we could make that mistake, though. So is this a real diner in real life? Like, can I go visit
a real
this
diner
when I get out there?
Well, Charles, knowing you, they might leave you outside. But if you play your cards right, maybe take a shower, get a new shirt, haircut, maybe shave up a little bit, maybe fix that fucking attitude, Damn.
So pretty much go to Uzbeki cave and then come back.
Yeah,
and
do what I
clean up?
did.
Yeah, okay. Fuck you.
Yeah. Have a large false flag antagonist break your back very dispassionately in a very boring scene, and then spend 45 minutes of a movie ostensibly about you in a hole in the ground in Central Asia. But anyways, I'm going to try to read your mind and guess that you didn't like the soundtrack.
No, I like the soundtrack a lot.
Oh, fuck. That was my whole thing. God damn it.
We can go back and take this out, and I can say that I didn't like it.
Shit.
Do you want me to?
Okay, cut here.
Okay.
Cut here. Go back.
All right, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I hated the soundtrack. No, shut up. I was doing it.
Well, Charles, of course you with your small mind and your limited interest in feeling joy hated the soundtrack. But no, kidding aside, I didn't like the soundtrack when I watched the first half of the movie twice.
Damn.
Once alone, once with friends to finish the film.
You do go that extra mile.
Yeah. Because I wanted to watch it all in one go, because you give me shit all the time about watching it like on my laptop while I'm actively masturbating and texting people, which you seem to think takes away from the viewing. So I actually decided to rewatch the beginning rather than just be like, I generally remember what happened. Um, but at the first, I didn't like the soundtrack. I thought it was weird and inappropriate and sort of off-putting and irritatingly sort of light in a movie that was obviously quite dark and unpleasant, until I read the director, deliberately set out to have the soundtrack reflect what the main character Louis Bloom like is imagining as he goes through his own fucked up nightmare Horatio Alger story of capitalism and the American dream, which I loved. And I really, as the movie went on, I got more into it. So by the time I unearthed that nugget of wisdom from IMDb, it worked for me and it made sense.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know that, but it definitely. I sort of feel what you're feeling in the initially, but for some reason, I guess intuitively, the director's choice worked for me because it definitely brought out. We should probably mention that this is a very close character study of a complete psychopath, sociopath.
Well, I think sociopath.
I don't
The
know what the
movie is
difference
incredibly disturbing, almost from the first shot of Jake Gyllenhaal as Louis Bloom in the film. He's trying to break into a train yard at night. So the first time we see him, it's in the harsh glare of a flashlight. And from that moment, you just see this hungry creature in the darkness feeding. And that is the first and most accurate representation of this character, who relentlessly and methodically learns systems to survive and exploits systems to succeed. And by the end of the film, he straight up admits to his unfortunate sidekick in one of my favorite lines, maybe in movies now. There's this moment where he's being chided in a move that will prove to be a great miscalculation by his sidekick, Rick, who says, you just don't understand people, man. And Lewis turns to him and goes, "What if I told you I just didn't like people?"
Yeah, it's he's fucking amazing. Jake Gyllenhaal did an amazing job as the. I mean, we've watched a lot of movies lately where the main protagonist has been slightly crazy, like Cloverfield, and this, and a couple other ones where it's just like the actors are doing a very, very pretty subtle attempt at mannerisms and facial expressions that really get across both sides of what they're thinking and what they're expressing. And Jake fucking nailed it. He is perfect as Louis Bloom.
Yeah, well, I think that any good piece of art is something that you enter this world and it's so richly populated that you experience that, like, beyond language, beyond linear reality moment where you enter something else. And it's more than escapism. You're really like accessing a part of the human experience that can't be articulated without this abstraction. And this was, I think, as far as a leading performance goes, on par with Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, which I think is about as generous a compliment as one can give, as far as someone just, seriously going to some other level in a role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'd go that far, but that's a huge compliment, and it's a pretty accurate representation of just watching him do this thing. It's the way basically the reasons why. I'll get into the reasons why I didn't like it as much as I had thought I was going to, especially on the second viewing. But this is pretty much a movie about, capitalism, American society, and the way that the workforce is structured, as well as, a little more than that. But it's really much, it looks at how people let themselves be taken advantage of. It looks at how easily someone in power can just keep gaining power. It looks at, a system completely based on getting ahead is all about, lying to people and stealing from people. And I thought it was a very well done look at that whole system in a larger context.
Yeah, and again, what's funny about it is that I kind of thought going in that the stakes were going to hit some kind of like unimaginable level of like, the restraint of the film, the fact that all of it is so believable, and even the climax is so luridly manageable that I think that's what really makes it work for me as a film. The manipulations and the heartlessness of his character. It like this movie does not erupt into like a human centipede or like, you know, Portrait of a Serial Killer style nightmare world. It's the simple fact that all of this seems extremely real, and the stakes are so small. That's the gross part. Like, that's what's so sickening about it.
Yeah, that's actually a great point because it is a satire at heart, but it's not like one of those crazy satires that really pushes things to extremes. It really does, it has that slight push, but it's so grounded in reality and what could actually happen. It just reminded me, I worked for Time Warner Cable for a really long time, and it just like immediately brought me back to, how millions of people just let themselves, get paid $8 an hour because they don't really not only do they not ask, but there's not even really a system to ask. They're not told to ask. Like that scene where Rick's like, he's getting paid fucking $30 a night while this guy's making tens of thousands of dollars. And he finally is like, all right, you get your raise. You can ask me for whatever I want or whatever you want. And he just is like, 75. And he's just like, all right, 75. And just like that mentality, it really, most people are in that mentality where they really don't see the value in what they're doing, and they let their bosses just fucking take 90%, 100, almost 100% of the profits and just hand out little nothings to all the people that let them do that.
Well, and also to piggyback on that, the commentary of, okay, so in sociopathic capitalists gone awry productions of the past, they usually focus on like robber barons, Wall Street traders, actual criminals. But this is a movie where a destitute sociopath turns to the market of human suffering itself. Like, that comment is so profound.
Definitely.
He's not in Wall Street manipulating vast indexes. He's not building an empire. He's just making money off the fact that frightened, well-off white people are addicted to fear, and he can make money showing them visuals of their own people being mowed down in a way that is packaged by the media into this endless nightmare phenomena that has to be monitored. And, it's so fucking gross, and I loved it.
Yeah, and the fact that, as we were saying earlier, it's not even that, it's not an extreme thing like whatever that Swift short essay is about, like eating children to stave off hunger. It's like, this is actually
Jonathan Swift, A Modest Proposal.
Thank you. This is actually, this is what happens on the nightly news. People literally watch the exact clips that are represented here in the movie, and to take like to notice that and to really see sort of how insidious news culture is, and to sort of turn that into a pretty much a strict indictment of the culture that allows it and really feeds off of it. It's really, that's why, my critiques of this movie are, let me just get into it now. I think the biggest reason, as a person that enjoys sort of more emotional films that really try to capture feelings rather than, ideas, this movie is a really successful movie about ideas. I think the one problem though is that it really doesn't, you don't really care about anyone too much. You see them as the choreographed elements that are required for this type of story. But just as a Charles hobby watching, it never quite got more than really well done propaganda rather than like a story about people interacting.
Let me rebut that.
Yeah, go for it.
There are a couple of very interesting details in the film that speak to a very restrained kind of storytelling that I think actually is quite clever and speaks to these human moments buried in a story that I agree is largely about pursuing this idea relentlessly. But when Louis Bloom first, totally unsolicited, shows up to this news station to give a footage-hungry news director, horrifically graphic visuals of a man who's been shot to death, the first thing they see on the tape is him basically trying out his camera by himself and awkwardly filming himself just to see if it works. And they have to fast forward through it. And then later in the film, spoilers galore, dorks, when he refers to basically having gotten to a point where he has successfully coerced this woman into sleeping with him as part of their deal. It's both of this backwards introduced critical story elements that the director chooses to let leak out in a way that I think is kind of brilliant, where we do see these human moments that are not shown, in a linear manner, that speak to these like vulnerable, unspoken things. And while I agree with you, it's a fast-moving movie that focuses, on its general thesis. Those details did make it a lot more complex and a lot more rich than it could have been.
Sweet. Yeah, actually, I dig that a lot, that scene. I mean, I noticed it and I laughed at it, but that's actually a really good point, that's one of the few moments where you get to really see a different side. It's the director and the acting and the writing are all they really control things well, so that as you were talking about the music earlier, you really do get, a look at him and how he comes across, but how you sort of get an idea of how he's intending to come across. But I like that. That's a nice little moment where it's sort of not really within his control, and you do sort of see. Yeah, that's why it's definitely not a failure. I'd say it's a huge success, and it definitely hits at human. There was I forget the line. There was one line where I was like, okay, this is definitely pushing things to more than just about this idea that he really wants to explore. But I can't remember it now, so that was a really stupid waste of time that I just went off on.
Well, let me redeem your objective failure just now by raising a question I had a moment ago. This movie basically feels like the descendant of Peter Bogdanovich's Network.
Interesting. I actually, I thought it was a brother, and I'll let you continue. I just wanted to say, I thought it was a brother to Killing Them Softly.
Well, we can get over the genealogy, the cinematographic genealogy of this film. We could talk about all night, Charles, but God knows I don't have the time, and nor do our fond listeners. Am I right? Pause. Wait. Let him talk. Okay, that's enough time. Yeah. Kind of like Network is such a 70s movie in that you have a lot of like iconic character actors really leaning into these parts to great effect, but it's also a very broad satire that, it is very much a moral parable. So, you definitely have Faye Dunaway and William Holden killing it in that movie, making some really incredible characters. But it's also, almost cartoonish in a lot of its more memorable elements, from its iconic freakout scene to the terrorist group at the end to Ned Beatty as the voice of God / network executive. But it covers a lot of the same ground about like what is exploitation, what is the media to people, what is the role of television. But this is in many ways a sleeker, more informed, more uncomfortably lived in movie. But I thought that the two have a lot of parallels across like a 40-year gap that I thought were really interesting.
Yeah, that actually is really interesting. And the reason why I thought of Killing Them Softly was it sort of talks about the other side of things, like the commodity of human life. And did you see that?
I did not.
Okay. And again, it's got a big cast of, Brad Pitt, and then it got some of those little guys that do bit parts that play that part really well. And it also was a nice satire. It ends with a fucking amazing scene that I won't spoil for anyone if you haven't seen it. But I think it just, it had a little more heart to it. And I really, I don't know what it was, but it tried to accomplish similar goals. And I think it just sort of had that mix more of, it has a political agenda at stake, whatever you want to call it, but it also is trying to, move deeply too. Where this one, I think you made some good points about how it also had some sort of depth to it, but it just didn't. The ratio isn't quite for my, like to put this in my top list of things. It's not going to make it.
You know, I know I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I feel that, yeah, this is not the most emotionally resonant movie. A lot of the parts operate in the manner you would imagine those parts would operate in. But I'm going to meet it where it is, and with its stated agenda, it meets it so thoroughly and is really a slow boil that has some absolutely stunning moments. And is it time to bust into full spoiler?
Yeah, dude. It's always time.
There's a moment in the film where Lewis's meek, unassuming sidekick finally decides it's time to step up, and as Lou puts together his magnum opus self-directed mini movie of getting cops to confront armed murderers, Rick realizes he suddenly has leverage, attempts to throw it back in Lou's face, and Lou, in an absolutely devastating bit of acting by Gyllenhaal, seemingly agrees to capitulate to Rick's demands and give him half of the reward they'll get for leading the cops to these murderers. And, pardon my cough, the moment Jake Gyllenhaal, Louis Bloom, agrees to Rick's terms, you know that Rick is done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is just a moment. And when Rick's end finally comes, it is so bleak and so cold as Louis Bloom leads him into the gun of a dying murderer. I mean, that was just an unbelievable moment. I thought that was a climactic thing, so impressive. I don't know, that really blew me away. Much as that dying man blew away poor Rick.
But no, the whole end of this movie is fucking awesome. It's exciting, it's fun to watch, but it's also the whole movie is so well created. And normally that can be really hard to watch when you see, people say lines and you can sort of tell this was a created thing. This movie somehow managed to really have everyone work together so well to create this idea and this story and all these images, yet it really just came across. And I mean, it must be because of the skill of everyone involved. Actually, this might be the only movie where I enjoy Bill Paxton.
I knew we were going to get to the Big Bill question because I was thinking back to our days pre-podcast when we were doing a little show called Outpost 31, where we got into a bit of a scrum over After Dark, Catherine Bigelow's vampire western, a movie I greatly enjoy, which features maybe my all-time favorite Bill Paxton quote that I thought was wasted on you because you're a piece of shit. So when I saw my boy Bill in this movie, I was like, well, is old twisted panty Charles gonna have a whole thing about Bill Paxton? And I'm happy to hear that you've maybe come around on Bill.
No. Bill has come around on me. Did I say that right? That sounds weird.
I don't think Bill Paxton knows you exist. I don't think that's real.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, he just works. He's always so over the top, especially back in the 80s and 90s. He was just so awful. I thought he was just really bad at acting, but here he was subtle. Just everything was about a movie about psychopaths and and crime and rape and murder. This was actually a very level, controlled movie where Bill Paxton really didn't get the leg room to fucking spit and rant and be all crazy. He played it cool, and he was great. This is the Bill Paxton I've been waiting for my entire life.
Well, you've spit upon the greater part of his opus, so...
Like what?
I can't believe you can't put aside your James Cameron issues enough to not enjoy Bill Paxton and Aliens. That is astonishing. He is so good in After Dark.
It's not even my Cameron issues. He's the issue. And I mean, that movie has so many problems. I saw it again in theaters recently, tried to give it another shot. It has some good stuff, but overall it's a piece of shit. And Bill Paxton is one of those shit pieces. Just his shitty little voice and his overacting style. It's just a fucking mess. He's a mess. I wonder what else he's been in, because there's only a few things that I really give him credit for.
And that's the Charles Bill Paxton corner. You know, he kills in this movie. I loved him.
Fucking did.
His scene where him and Jake Gyllenhaal, and the scene where he tries to bring Lewis into the fold of Mayhem Video, his own company, is one of my favorite exchanges in recent memory on both halves of the conversation. But Bill Paxton oozing the kind of unctuous, hollow charm that only a Bill Paxton can, offer, and Jake Gyllenhaal's complete ice-cold denial.
Yeah.
With the incredible sign-off of, I want to grab you by the ears and yell in your face, I'm not interested, but instead I'm going to go home and do some accounting.
Yeah.
Man, what a great moment.
Great scene. Actually, that was the scene I was thinking of when I really said that he was good, because that's an incredible moment. The line before that where he's like, you're still talking to me like I'm interested in your... I forget what he says exactly, but just that whole scene is good. And Bill Paxton... he became my man for one movie, and I don't know if he'll do it again, but hey, there's hope. There's always hope.
Well, that's very optimistic, Charles. And Bill, the gauntlet's been thrown. Make a movie that's good, finally. Says
Again.
Charles.
Again.
My fucking co-host on this fucking podcast.
Make me another Twister.
Okay. Twister. You like Twister.
Yeah, sure. It's got a CGI cow.
Yeah, CGI cow. My dad used to go to the Ben & Jerry's in Pittsfield and pick up the wooden cutout cow thing and go, look, it's Twister. And it would start spinning the cow in a circle around right in the Ben & Jerry's.
We have very different dads, but I think they could be friends.
I'll pass that along to my father.
Okay.
Do you think you would like Bill Paxton's dad?
No. I didn't even have to think about it.
He did a bad job.
No. Yeah, he did a terrible job. He let him get away with being that for, 20 years? What was his first movie?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's this culture of, me we live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting segue into some ideas I had about the next movie we watched. So,
and actually, my segue is that Bill Paxton's facial hair in Nightcrawler would have fit in swimmingly in Richard Linklater's absolutely wonderful "Everybody Wants Some!" !
It would have. Yeah, the hair was right on point, as was pretty much everything else. I saw this movie by myself at the Nickelodeon Theater around the corner, and there were only like 10 other people in there. And, it's especially seeing a comedy by yourself, it's a little harder, but it was a joy. I enjoyed every moment of this movie, and it really is a great next piece in the Linklater canon.
Well, hold on. First off, I insist we begin this segment by me doing the My Sharona baseline intro a cappella. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, as long as I don't have to do anything.
No, you just sit back and get ready for what I like to call a little ear candy. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Boom boom bap bap boom bap boom boom bap bap boom bap boom boom bap bap boom bap 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 bap. Boom boom bap bap. Okay, you get the idea. But I saw this movie on an off day on tour in my very yelly, ear-piercing, loud noise band, and I was in this theater in Ithaca, New York, the Cinemapolis, I want to say.
/ Uzbekistan, right? I thought you were in Uzbekistan. What do you mean Ithaca?
Ithaca is...
Wait, did you just go to...
a city just outside of the Uzbekistan city in Central Asia.
Oh.
Where I was.
Okay.
Because of my broken back that Bane did.
All right.
That Bane, huh? Oh, what was his deal with... Oh, he talks so weird, and,
it was funny.
It was like, I thought he was the bad guy, but then he just wasn't all of a sudden, and everyone was like, okay, fine, he's just not the bad guy. And that was it. Because, that's how you make a movie with compelling characters and antagonists that have any emotional coherence.
Well, masks. All compelling characters have masks. That's why that movie was so good. I think everyone had
Charles.
A mask.
I'm the guy who broke Josh's back and put him in a Uzbeki prison. Gotham! It's a shitty movie.
Okay. So anyway, you were in
Right,
New York.
right. And so I'm in this movie theater with this guy I'm on tour with who revels in filth and bleakness, and just his band is called Scab Addict, and he loves grindcore, and he's just like a pretty intense guy, and I mean a total sweetheart, but also just like I'm like we watched some $1 horror DVDs together, and I just didn't know if this like slasher flick enthusiast was going to give a flying fuck about a movie that can be succinctly described as a very pleasant weekend in Texas. And we just were like, left that movie beaming. Just like, let me drop the bomb, Charles. And listeners, me and Charles talk in between tapings, if you can imagine that. Usually his girl calls my girl, and we set up like a video thing during lunch. We're both off carbs right now, so normally it's like we're both having salads, maybe make like a green juice with the salad, like a salad and a green juice. Charles does the whey protein powder. I don't. I'm vegan. Not for the health, it's for the animals. But I said, Charles, I've got a real bombshell to drop in this week's episode. And Charles said, are the listeners ready? If you drop this bombshell, what responsibility as podcasters do we have over the listeners? Because if I blow your fucking minds to Mars, and hey,
is this still
if
me
I blow
saying
your
this,
minds,
or is this you saying this now?
No, I'm saying it back to you.
Oh, okay.
If I blow their minds all the way up to Pluto Nash and back, it's a movie joke. Eddie Murphy playing The Adventures of Pluto Nash. Pretty good movie. Anyways, Charles, I'm going to say this, and you tell me if I'm right up the crazy tree with a big old stick of nuts.
Wait, I'm still confused. Are we back at the earlier conversation, or are you asking me this now?
No, now we're IRL.
Jesus Christ, you moved so haphazardly through that. Okay.
And in the bedroom, ladies.
Oh, ask it. Ask me the question you already asked me. Have you asked me this before? I'm confused. Oh, God, this is stressing me out. What is going
on? This was a better movie than Dazed and Confused.
Whoa, the bomb has dropped.
Ba-boom. Hey, listeners, sorry. Mommy and Daddy, maybe take the kids upstairs, okay? Maybe put them to bed. Because the adults are out. We're talking serious now.
I am, he's like, Linklater is one of those few directors where pretty much everything he makes, I'll just say everything he makes is good. Usually some people have some little lapses and you sort of wonder what happened there, or, maybe they're just getting too big for their britches. But Linklater, regardless of what he's up to, where he is, I mean, I guess he's always in Austin, but what he's doing, I think he's just been a really successful filmmaker. Like, I think Cronenberg is another one that I just can't really find any problems with. Linklater is amazing, and to try to say one movie's better than the other, I guess I could go for it, but they're both really great, and I don't know, they're different. It's sort of like Wes Anderson. I guess I could try to make a hierarchy of his films, but they're all very much aligned. They're in this similar trajectory of his storytelling, and I really couldn't see one without the other.
Well, let me say two things. One is I like this idea that you're suggesting, because there's a lot of artists that do this where it's like, you're right. It makes no sense to rank their releases because they're all feeling out the same general idea as one greater effort. And I hear that. With Linklater, who, except for maybe The Waking Life, which has aged extraordinarily poorly, the basic setup of the film is so clearly a spiritual continuation of Dazed and Confused, but one, I think, that is a more effective examination of extraordinarily similar territory. Is that more fair?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's reminiscent in so many ways, and I think with Linklater, he, I don't even know where to start. I have so much to talk about with this movie, but he's just very good. Like especially lately, the idea of growth. He's really interested in that idea of discovery. I think his main, whether it's discovery of self or discovery of love or just sort of, just growing up and finding new things. He's somehow he has managed in a light 2 hours completely express these ideas that are, totally consumable and palatable. And that's sort of what I was talking about with Nightcrawler, is that it had a bunch of ideas to talk to, but I felt like, they were told to me, where this is somehow in 2 hours of dialogue and expression. Not only did I get the story, but I really just felt like I discovered something. And that's just an amazing, as an artist, Linklater, like to just be able to do that so effortlessly. It's incredible.
Well, it's so funny that this middle-aged, eccentric Texan has become like our culture's chief documenter of youth. Because, so like the best, one of the least appreciated, Truffaut movies is Small Change, which feels like a movie that Richard Linklater adores, because it's a movie about youth, and it's not told. It's about children experiencing life as children from the perspective of children, largely. And that makes it feel very revolutionary for what it is, because, you were not, there's very little framework on it. There's very little, you're not being spoon-fed a narrative about youth. You're basically watching kids be kids, and that is a revelation in and of itself. Linklater over, between, this movie, Boyhood, Bad News Bears, Dazed and Confused, and the list goes on. He really summons up that feeling of limitlessness, that he summons up that feeling of every door being open and every morning being full of possibility, and a kind of naivete and arrogance and lust and impossible self-awareness that is being young. And it's astounding to watch this movie. My first week of college, and I'm 25, I'm not very old, still 7 years ago, I certainly felt like life was a lot less, at this point in my life, I know there's still going to be a huge amount of change in my life, but I also know enough about the basic parameters of who I am, what I do, what makes me feel passionate and excited, and what I hate. Like I have enough information now that I have a general idea of things that could turn out. But I remember my first week of school, and though I'm not a well-built, charismatic, talented baseball player, and I was more doing drugs in the woods with strangers, that feeling, that late summer feeling of great portent and great significance and a sense of awe at what could be, all of that came flooding back to me in this movie. And as these young men try on different personalities, like, sure, they're jocks, but they go to the theater party, they go to the punk show, they go to the disco, they go to the country thing, and there's no bad guy, there's no goal, there's no cumbersome arc, there's no convenient plot jump. It's just people reveling in a sense of freedom that we are ultimately denied. And that's not a bad thing. It's just what living is. Doors close. And this movie is such a powerful, glowing statement about how vibrant life can be that I'm getting emotional talking about it. And it's a movie about dudes ogling girls' butts while they try to get laid while they play baseball.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's powerful in all, and I think you mentioned that, it's very hard to not have this relate to you in a lot of ways, and that's that is a really powerful part of this film. I mean, everyone grows up. Not everyone goes to college. Not everyone, is a baseball player, but everyone grows up. Everyone meets people when they're young, and everyone feels these things. And I think even more successful is the ways in which it makes us understand so much more than just ourselves. I think that's what you're talking about. They go to the punk show, they go to the country show, they go to the disco, they go to all these different places. And, not only are they finding stuff about themselves, but everywhere they go, they meet all these people and they all just sort of come in and you get to meet them briefly and then they go away. Some of them last longer. Some of them become center stage. Some of the people you thought would be, the main characters go away. I think Linklater has a really beautiful understanding of, main characters and the way that they interact, but also with all the periphery. I mean, seeing Boyhood, it's like 3 hours of just following around one person, and I was fucking sobbing when the mother's like, "You're leaving now." And it's like how quickly, for a few minutes, he shifts that focus away from our main character, who is all about his growth, all about his discovery, all about everything he's doing. And we suddenly see that it's also about all the people that he's touching and affecting, and just like the way that he understands life is really powerful. And, that's why Linklater's just so good at what he does.
Well, it's right. He has this ability to create. He kind of creates a little cosmos in his movies where there's this gravitational ability, this very loosely defined gravity keeps it all together and in the same world. And you're right, these diversions don't seem like diversions. They seem like vitally important examinations of this world. And I don't know if you've read The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño, but it's a book that, from a narrative standpoint, similarly uses the main characters as a jumping off point for a myriad array of other observations and other points of view and other experiences that are anchored and pinioned together by those center characters. But that's kind of really the story, is the periphery. And it's, I don't know, this movie, you live in this movie. I wanted to live in this movie.
Yeah. And I think that's, there's a lot, this is going to sound like just sort of an asshole rant for a second, but, there's a lot of right now is all about sort of this word relatability comes up a lot, especially with, I took some writing classes, and that's somehow a really big part of people's critiques. And, I read some article like or Ira Glass couldn't find some Shakespeare play relatable. Whatever. I don't know if we don't really need to talk about that, but just this idea of relatability. And it's very easy to think of this movie as being successful because it's relatable, but I really just wanted to, I think it's so much more successful for helping us understand more than just like saying, "Oh, that happened to me. I love this movie because I can remember when that happened to me." I think the whole premise is that this happens to everyone. Everyone has this, and the way he captures that for us to view, if you're really, it's so much more than just about yourself. It's about us learning about all this in the same way that the main character, starts liking this girl or talks to the pothead baseball guy who turns out to be 30. It's like all these people are there in the same way that I am, and to like focus in on the relatability to me, it's just like everyone, just there's more than that, and that's why I think Linklater really is successful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what else to say. This is a fan-fucking-tastic film. I will likely see it again. It is a beautiful movie.
And it's funny, too. It's like, it's actually funny. It's got some really laughing moments. And all the characters are so well cast. It's true. I like really wanted to be friends with all these people, even if they were, just so different in a lot of ways. It just, the way Linklater writes these people is they're all just so human, but they all have their like little areas that are really charming, and you want to meet them.
Well, I want to get into that because there's two characters who could be considered antagonists in the film. And obviously for a Richard Linklater movie, this is extremely a relative term in his universe. But the main character sort of faces this two very competitive men. One is a pitcher named Jay Niles, who's a sort of completely off the hook, insanely competitive ding-dong who seemingly has no social skills and acts like a huge prick constantly and is always waving his status as like a sought-after draftee in everyone's faces. And there's also this mustachioed guy named Glenn, who's the captain of the baseball team. He's this sort of like almost like Camelot handsome guy who is extremely competitive as well, and furiously loses a game to the main character. And in when they finally actually play baseball in the film, like 2/3 of the way into the movie, they actually play baseball for the first time. Both of those arcs are dealt with in really fascinating ways. Where, for one, Jay Niles, the sort of like over the top, ranting, insane guy who's hyper competitive, almost to the point of seeming like he can't relate to people at all, basically gets put in his place. Someone hits a home run off of him, he freaks out, but then later he comes over and says, that was a good hit. And the guy goes, yeah, I know. And that's it. That they resolve that tension, they resolve that animosity through that communal gesture of this thing they're doing as a team. And then again, the main character, who's a pitcher, he pitches against Glenn, the handsome, also very competitive, but grimly charismatic head of the team, and whiffs him with the strike ball. But then with the next pitch, the guy homers off of him. And in a lesser film, it would have been important for the main character to like strike him out, to like defeat him. But he just learns that he's got a lot to learn. He isn't that good yet. That guy is better than him right now. And like that's so fucking amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way you're talking about it. It doesn't sound like much, but in the movie, it's so well done. It's just like it is. It's very quiet, and that's what I mean. Linklater has a lot of talking in all of his movies, but it's never. He does that wonderful thing where he just like the talking is about so much more than what it's saying, and these little moments really like that scene where you're talking about where he essentially apologizes for being an asshole by saying it was a good hit. It's like there's so much in that language, more than just the sentences and their body, like there's so much to that one moment that Linklater brings out. It's very good writing, and yeah, it's the whole movie is just strewn with that. It's just essentially that's a great way to think about his movies, is that they're just a series of moments, and perhaps that's why Waking Life didn't age that well for you. I don't know, maybe because that's such like a set piece of moments rather than just like a lazy passing of moments. I don't know, but he does that very well.
Well, he kind of peaks. Waking Life has a self-aware moment that is tremendously funny, but also unfortunately is a little too on the nose. Where at some point someone asks the main character how his dream's been going, and he goes, "Well, so far people just kind of been talking at me."
Yeah, exactly.
And
he realizes it.
It's right. It's funny because it's like, okay, thank God he gets it, But it's true. That movie is someone being talked at repeatedly, frequently by people speaking in aphorisms, metaphors, and tones so hopelessly naive and seemingly guileless that it just kind of comes off a bit hokey, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the comparative restraint he shows in Boyhood and Now Everybody Wants Some, that is his mastery.
Yeah.
He shows you life. There is no pretense. He shows you that imperfect people find imperfect solutions to things, and that's fine. He shows you that you can be the main character, and you're still not going to get laid, and you're still not going to beat the bad guy, and you're still not going to just automatically be the hero at the end. You're just someone growing. And it's so wild to watch someone cement from Slacker all the way to this, his legacy as like, God, what's that German word? Builders, Dramamog, the coming of age story,
Yeah, Bildungsroman or something.
Yeah, who gives a shit? This is an American show, But he has kind of reinvented the coming of age story. He's taken these tired tropes about talent shows and confrontations and, kissing the girl and beating the bully and driving away in the car, and he replaces all of that, with a movie that ends with someone going to class, because that's life. You had a great weekend, and now it's Monday.
Yeah, and maybe the old, I think it's coming of age is often stories about young people. But I think he also, I talked about the mother a little earlier, and the mother or the father too in Boyhood. Like, he also sees that coming of age isn't just limited to young people becoming slightly older. I think he realizes that coming of age happens all the time, and there's all these moments where you have to push forward and grow as a person, and he captures that. I think, we talked about Waking Life and also Slacker, his first one. You can see that he really loves this idea of the vignette and things moving from one thing to another. And to see him go from his early movies where it was so, established, that cutting line where it's like, here's that moment, on to the next, which I really like. I think Slacker's a really good movie. But to see him really find that, I think with the before movies where the moments become a little more spacious and hard to tell apart. And now with Boyhood, which is 3 hours all watching one person grow up, like he now understands even better how to like really get that across in a much better way. He's just, I can't wait for his next movie.
Yeah, and I feel like there's going to be a tendency, given a lot of dated Western notions of what a magnum opus is, that people are going to view this as a minor work and Boyhood as his like great triumph. But this movie is as rich in detail, thought, compassion, brilliance. I can't really say enough about this movie. I feel so ridiculous. It just, like, I was so won over by this movie, and it is a movie about jocks trying to party for a weekend. It is like seemingly the least compelling narrative ever put down on paper, and with no need for pretense and no artificial structure. Linklater makes a movie that is an achingly beautiful, love letter to growth and to life and to Texas. And I would say if you have not had the great pleasure of watching Slacker, Dazed and Confused, Boyhood, and this, those four movies have a through line that you deserve being examined in some kind of sequence.
Do you think having this set in 1980 is like a... Well, I'll just have a little precursor to the question. I thought a lot of this movie about growth and connection was really interesting to set it in a time period without smartphones and computers and the internet, where you see specifically them calling each other. You see leaving notes. You see the way that they have to interact because the technology's not there. Do you think Linklater sort of has a more appreciative of that time period where maybe growth was a little harder in some ways, but then made it a little more easier and substantial? Or do you think it was just random?
I want to stay away from projecting things onto his vision, because I had a similar thought, but, that was when he went to college, Charles. I think he's just trying to tell a story that is honest to what he did. I think it would be beneath him and the film to make a commentary on iPhone culture or whatever, because even though that observation is unavoidable, this movie is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to yoke it to that.
Perfect. And I think that's actually, we'll wrap it up with comparing it to Nightcrawler, where it basically, if Linklater's movie had been about iPhone culture, how it's devoid, that would have been the Nightcrawler version of Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah.
Where that's really just, it's a little thing I noticed where like the little moment where him filming himself, that, it's essentially the reverse. And which is why I love this movie more than Nightcrawler, because it's about a lot with so much in it, where Nightcrawler's got that specific point it's trying to push. But I think maybe it is, he's in the 80s time period. He grew up then. That's what he knows. Let's not try to think what he thinks. Either way, beautiful, recommended. We didn't even spoil that much. You could still go see this and really enjoy it. So that's awesome.
There is no way to spoil Everybody Wants Some. I'm not sure what we would spoil. Oh, here we go. There's a rope swing in the
Shut
movie.
Up.
So look forward to the rope swing scene. And Charles, I'll look forward to our next episode of The Real Deal, Josh and Charles, because I'm Josh.
And this is Charles, and we're back together again, and we'll be back again together then, next time, when we come back then.
Yeah, so fuck you, listener. Bye.